I'm gonna popcorn some questions into this round table, and they're just going everywhere. Let's see. What can I popcorn in? Well, let's go into talk about. I'm trying to think here. Okay. So, how to deal? One of the things is I'm gonna do this on relationships, and we can take it with in different areas. So, how do you deal with conflict? How do we deal with conflict in it could be in our business, in our relationship, in our lives, could be inner conflict, could be in our marriages. Like, how do you deal with conflict? Give people some good tips on that.
Yeah, I can jump right in if you like,
Jump
Amy.
right in. Yes.
All right, perfect. So I think the first thing that when we're in the face of a conflict, there is always an initial reaction, and we can usually feel it mind, body, spirit, right? There's thoughts, like a reactive thought that comes up. There is some sort of visceral physical sensation that we experience, whether it's a knot in our stomach, a tightness in our throat, sometimes right here. Some of us feel it right in here between the eyebrows, right? And then on a spiritual level, on an energetic level, we feel almost like a darkness or heaviness energetically. And so what I would say is that something really critical or super useful is to be able to get ourselves in observation mode of those things happening. Right now, we're not spending 20 minutes because it's happening in the moment. I mean, you're expected to respond in the face of a conflict right in that moment. But if we can flip into even observing just one part of it, if you can just, and I do this all the time. So for me, I'll often feel it here and here. And just for me, the feeling is very helpful. And once I recognize and I can observe, I'm observing the physical feeling, then I can own that whatever my reactive brain is about to say or think, it is a reaction. It has very little to do with what's actually happening and more to do with my past and my stuff. So when we're in that observation place, we can actually get curious. So the first thing is I would say very briefly, go inward into observation. Second thing is to get curious so we can get out here, outside of ourselves, outside of our reaction. And usually asking a question is very helpful, because what we want to do is assume we know exactly the whole story behind what's being said and that other person or whatever thing that happened. We want to go in like that attack mode. But if we can ask a question, we learn more about where that is coming from. I would say, I've worked with, I've worked with men and women, but I work mostly with women, like really smart professional women, and either single or in relationships. And I would say, and Ramona, I'll bet you'll agree with this too, is that so often, maybe 98% of the time, conflict and arguments are based on misunderstanding, on thinking we know exactly what the meaning was behind the thing that happened or the thing that was said. And they do it to us too. So if we can get curious and ask questions and get some more information about where that thing or that statement, that action was coming from, and get into that world, first of all, it's really great for the other person. Really great, because they have an opportunity to be seen, heard, and known in that moment. So they're less likely to be reactive. And then you have an opportunity to let them get into your world, for them to get into our world. And we can share either how that lived for us or why we took an action that was offensive to the other person, and so on. So from there, it's like, now we're dealing with, okay, from a place of knowing and seeing each other and feeling known and feeling seen. Totally different way to go about resolving that conflict than from the reactive mode.
Right. Oh, beautiful.
I'll jump in on that and give you just an actual phrase to say. So I told you this is my forte. Okay. So Michelle's saying get into the curious mindset, or I can use mindset. That's perfect for you. The curious mindset. And the words to use right then, because you're like, You can't think. You're totally non-creative in that moment. All the juices in your brain have run out. They're just not there. So we practice. We say, help me understand. Those 3 words.
Mm,
Help me
That's good.
understand.
Understand. That's good.
So help me understand why you're so upset. Help me understand what you're really saying. Help me understand what triggered this. Help me understand what you think I did that made you so upset. Help me understand those 3 words. And then when they respond, here's your word, 1 word. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Interesting. It buys you time. It buys you time to sort of, instead of, you're back at them, you're just like, okay, interesting. There's no judgment in it. There's no judgment in it. It just buys you a few seconds, beats, which can make all the difference in the world. We in Lifesavers, we call the whole skill set, which is a 4-hour thing, is a 4-hour course I do. Drop and cover. And that's exactly what Michelle's talking about. You drop back. And I love the idea of the observation mode. You drop back like an earthquake. You know, it isn't that you duck and cover. You're not avoiding the issue, but you drop back and try to see what's happening and self-monitor, like she's saying. Mm-hmm. So help me understand, and interesting will go a long way in your initial gut response.
Mm-hmm. Christelle?
I love it. And what I just, and it really comes down to communication. You know, a conflict, it depends on the type of conflict we are talking about, but it's really a communication that is not going in the right direction. So in that communication, you have to decide what's the intention. What do you want to convey as a message? Do you want to fight? If you want to fight, go fight, right? Just go back at them as hard they are coming to you, maybe harder, whatever. But if your intention is to resolve whatever problem or issue is happening, you have to make that decision that if I want this to end, I don't want this to become a huge drama. I don't want to fight. I want this to be resolved. You decide to speak about yourself. Because when somebody is attacking you, or you are in this position, or you feel attacked, because at the end of the day, it's really our internal conversation that gives the meaning to whatever we are hearing or seeing, or we decide to make it mean something. They are mean to me, or they are rude to me. They are saying this harsh word. It's our interpretation. Sometimes people are like, I didn't mean that, but that's how we felt. So we have to remember that it's happening within us. The way we feel is just interpretation. So now if we come from a place of, okay, I want a solution here. So from that place, you share your feeling, because it's all your stories that are happening. So you tell the person how you feel. When you change the tone, instead of you are saying this, instead of saying you are saying that, I did this, and you say, I'm hearing, what I'm hearing is this. They can say, no, that's not what I'm saying. But if you're saying, you are saying that I'm this person, what do you mean? Of course, you are saying this too. When you say you already, you're pointing finger. Everybody that feels like you're pointing finger at them, they want to fight back. But if you're just talking about yourself, now they don't feel attacked. Now they feel more connected because you're sharing your feeling. I feel a little bit offended. I feel, confused right now, because now you share your feeling, they feel touched as well, because now they are seeing a human being. They are not just seeing a punching ball they want to hit. So when you change just the way you put your wordings, instead of you, where the person will feel attacked and they will want to defend themselves, you are sharing your feelings. You're speaking about, I feel this way. This is what I understand. This is what I think. Now they can clarify, and that conversation of this is not what I meant will come earlier than, later after, oh, you thought that, but that's not what I'm saying. So that's just my take on that.
All right, thank you. I'm going to add on, everything you said is great. I love everything. And I'm going to add also that sometimes we're not good at conflict. So give your space. I always say, like, you give yourself a little bit of space to just be okay with, you know what? I suck at conflict. I don't like it. I run away from it, or I go totally 100% in, right? Whatever you do. So a lot of, I'm going to speak on one woman that I coach. She's like, she's not good at it, so she just hides. And I said, you know, and then of course after the fact you have all the great comebacks, right? You're like, oh my God, I could have said this, and this, right? So I just told her, just say, can you give me a minute after you use the restroom and get your thoughts together and come back and, you know, say what you need to say in a way, because, you know, I think a lot of ownership of women and who you are and what you need to work on, what you're good at, what you're not good at, whatever, is like giving yourself permission to take your power in that moment and take yourself out of it for a second, you know, take yourself out of it, get really kind of like, okay, what do I actually want to say? And then put yourself back in it. And claiming that space, I think, is powerful in any situation when you're just like, could be like, oh, can I call you back in 10 minutes? My mom's at the door, right? Like give yourself little moments to really rejig.
I love that, Amy. And I think sometimes we can even do it right inside the conversation.
Yeah.
Like what Ramona was saying, like saying interesting. It's like giving yourself a breath. You know, I also think part of owning our power in that moment and giving ourselves that space, like we can say out loud, like we can even say to the person, I struggle with conflict. This is hard for me. So just like, let me take a sec to get myself out of this reaction so that I can hear you. Like when we say that stuff out loud, like Christelle was saying, like we connect in that moment. Cause then we're like, okay, yeah, we don't have to both pretend like we're so sure of ourselves right now. You know, we can just get real and human together and find our way and navigate through this together.
And let me say that John Gottman, who's the premier researcher in relationships, particularly in marriage, husband and wife relationships, he is scientific, top of everyone in the industry. Their studies have found that taking a break is huge in your quest, if you will, to actually resolve, Christelle, if you really want to resolve the issue, taking the break. And I would hope that would be especially between husband and wife, particularly, that would be your goal to resolve in some way. You have to, I mean, because otherwise, instead of earthquake, you know, I call them earthquakes, and you can go 9 on the Richter scale, or you can just break a teacup a little bit. Has a lot to do with some really important tactics, and taking a break is right at the top.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to popcorn another question in. Is everyone ready?
Yes.
Can we talk about, someone asked, you know, clearing past disappointments? Like past mistakes in relationship, like how do you, maybe it's a forgiveness thing, or maybe it's she's asking how to clear past disappointments so you can be more aware of the present moment. I mean, how many times in relationship, remember when you did that? And I'd be like, I was like 19 to my friends, you know, to my friends, like how do you,
are you disappointed in yourself or in the other person?
However you want to take it, take it. I think she feels disappointed in self, you know.
And it can be both at the same time, I think, right?
And the truth also is everything we feel about others, actually feel it about ourselves, right? The external world is just a mirror of, you know, a reflection. So being disappointed of a partner or a friend that did something is really feeling disappointed on us. Maybe how did I trust that person? How did I see that coming? So you always have that feeling about yourself that you reflect on other people. So what I could say about that is just really go back. If you are now, it depends. It can show up in different ways. Maybe you are still in a relationship with the same person and you can't forget that they did that 10 years ago. You keep bringing that up every time something goes wrong with you. You're coming back again, doing this thing again, right? So if it's the case, you need to heal from whatever happened. bringing that up over and over again is just proof that you have never healed from it. It's there. The wound is still open. That's why every time you feel like somebody's poking again on the hole and you're going off. So take the time to do the healing. Go back to whatever happened. It can, just be you. You can get somebody to help you do that. Go back to the story, to whatever happened. Feel all the feelings that maybe you didn't feel at the time. If you were angry, let that anger out. If you were, disappointed, because sometimes people suppress emotions, especially if it's a couple. Okay, let not talk about it to, keep going. Let's try to keep it together. And there is anger that was never expressed. There is resentment there that, we just try to bury because we wanted to keep things together. So make sure that you really feel all those feelings. Everything that was left unhealed, that's why you're always triggered when something again happens, and you can't let it go. You can't let it go because the wound is still open. So my best advice is really just to take the time to heal from all the emotions that you felt when that thing happened.
Thank you.
So good. I love this topic. I in a seminar that you can get for free if you go to my website, it pops up and you can grab it. I speak to this specifically around becoming a power love woman, and you spoke to that a little bit earlier, Amy, unleashing the power love woman within. But disappointment. It sounds like, oh yeah, disappointment. Like when we say it, it doesn't feel that heavy. In reality, what we're often afraid of before we take that leap in a relationship, before we fall in love, before we commit to someone, before we take a job that feels, outside of maybe a leadership role in a job, or leave our job and become an entrepreneur. There is a visceral fear of disappointment. And what's interesting though, is when we look at this concept of disappointment, not all disappointments are felt equally. So if I go play golf and I don't do well, I'm like, maybe I'm good at golf, and I go and I play golf and it turns out I suck at it. I'm okay with that disappointment. I can brush it off, no problem, right? I can brush it off, no problem. Or, if I look at how, back when my love life was a mess, which it was for a long time, if I dated someone who outright told me they were not looking for commitment, and I was going after that and messing around with that and kind of hoping it would turn to something else, and it didn't turn out, I'd be disappointed and I would feel it, right? But that is nothing compared to the disappointment that I experienced when I truly put my whole heart into something that I believed was possible, and that didn't turn out. And so it's interesting to look at what's the context of that disappointment. So that's what I would say to this person, it's difficult for us, all of us, without knowing the details of it, right? But I would say, have a look at what's the context of it. Because if one thing that I believe is so worthwhile, a muscle worthwhile strengthening in ourselves, is the willingness to go wholeheartedly after something we want in our lives, knowing full well our hearts could be broken, whether it's by another person or by ourselves, that is an absolute possibility. And so is the fulfillment of our heart's greatest desires, right? And from that space, if we can be we don't have to like it, okay? Like I don't think any of us, we don't have to like it, but if we can allow that possibility, that's when we stop trying to, I think, like Christelle was saying, we stop waiting for things to be guaranteed before we go after them. And that's, I think, an important point when we look at the impact of disappointments, the ones that we feel, the ones that are really hard to take on. The impact of that is we're more careful moving forward, and we orient ourselves around, how do I make sure I don't have that feeling again? But that totally limits us, and then we won't go after the things that we want. So one tool, one little hack that I like when looking at a past disappointment that really, created a wound, like Christelle mentioned, is I look from the perspective, or I believe from the perspective, that this in some way, even if it's hidden from my view, in some way happened for me, not to me. And that can open up. We just kind of like, maybe I can't see it right now because this is not the end of the story. Life continues and goes on. I don't know the end yet, but I'm going to just, I got to. Something happened to me recently, like a really weird thing that was awful happened recently. I'm like, I don't know. I just have to believe that in some way that I can't see, this has happened for me, not to me. And down the road, I will be so grateful that it happened. And that can really just be such a gift we give ourselves.
Amen,
Yeah,
amen, amen.
Yes.
I really wanted to bring out that point, and you did it for me, Michelle.
Okay.
Because disappointment taken to an extreme can be really harmful and self-sabotaging and an obstacle to our happiness and all of that. But disappointment can also lead us to greater education. Like, that didn't work the way I wanted it to, or he's not the kind of person I was hoping for, or whatever, can lead us to looking for the answers, or, that they're going to take us into a greater light, more a higher plane of living, so disappointments can be catalysts at the same time. The problem is, sorry, I have to go back to marriage. That's why I wrote, for instance, 5 Lies, because, and my book, Why for Life, Power to Succeed in Marriage, takes you much more in depth. But you start with something as simple. A woman starts with something as simple as, you're not meeting my needs the way I thought you were. That's a disappointment. Here, one thing here, one there. That's a train. That is a path that you just go further and further down to trying to change him. I think you should be the way I think you should be, and so forth, till you can get all the way to the end, until you're in alienation. There's a better life, man, for me. So a small disappointment can lead to outright disillusionment. Shall I put it that way? So in that sense, a disappointment should be a little red flag to us, and we should trust our gut as women. That's one of our gifts. We have a gift for relationships and for intuition. We can feel when it's not right. Something's not right, and we're disappointed. That's a signal that something needs to be done, and we need to find the best way to remedy it, or remedy ourselves, whatever it takes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to build on you guys, but I'm going to say, if it was a big disappointment, I would also look at, well, what did you like about yourself, like even investing in that job or investing in that person? Like, take it to where what did you learn? What were you able to, how did you come out of it? How did you act afterwards? Like, did you go ahead and try new things, or what did you learn from it? Because we're always going towards the negative, like what we didn't do. But actually, who were we in taking that chance? Like, who were we in that relationship? Who were we in that job? What did we really excel at? And and just switch it to the positives of that learning experience. Like, it wasn't done to me, but for me. So, like, who did you, like, for me, maybe I was disappointed in my dancing career, whatnot, right? I don't hold that as important. What I hold is how I innovated, how I made my own way, did it my own way, how I was able to learn how to be, this master teacher and this thing. I didn't focus on what I didn't have. I focused on what I actually have and became, So that's also a beautiful tool, is to look at what you learned from it, and who you actually express yourself to be.